All right. Well, welcome, everyone. This is Gene Trowbridge of the Trowbridge Law Group with another episode of TLG Talks. And as you know, these episodes are featuring people who are friends to the syndication business, clients of mine. And we've had two interviews of one person who might go into syndication and isn't sure, and one very successful real estate broker who wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on here. And today we're going to be talking to a friend of mine and a client of the firm for many years, Andrew Cushman. And Andrew is the principal of Vantage Point Acquisitions. And Andrew's here in Southern California with me, but just got off of his surfboard in time to join us and had to throw it in the room in the office as opposed to, I guess you did have time to get it out of the back of your car. So I appreciate that.
Yep.
Say hi to everyone, Andrew.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on, Gene. I appreciate it. And actually, the surfboard, its full-time home is in the office when not being used. Helps keep me motivated. So.
Oh, that's great. So, that's funny. I didn't grow up out here. I grew up in Minnesota, and in Minnesota, it was all baseball and sports and all that stuff. And I wonder if I'd grown up here, if I would have been a surfer. I remember album covers of the Beach Boys with the flannel shirts on. I always wore a flannel shirt, always. So, but I don't know if I would.
Well, I didn't move out here until I was in my 20s, and that's when I learned to surf. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you can still learn. I know you. You're a fit guy.
I'm a fit guy. Yeah. One thing about running those half marathons, you don't fall off the board, and there are very few sharks on the trail.
That's true.
So let's get started with this interview. I know you're a busy guy. Andrew, if anyone wants to know all about you, they can certainly go to the website, and the website is on the screen, VPACQ. VantagePointAcquisitions.com, and they can read all about your biography. But why don't you tell us how you got into the syndication business?
Yeah, I took the standard route into real estate and went and got a chemical engineering degree and worked as an engineer for 7 years for a food company. And then my wife and I discovered flipping here in Southern California. I did our first flip in 2007. I walked in, quit my job, and then she quit hers 2 years later to join me full time. We flipped full time for about 4 years and said, hey, this has been great, but the deals are going to start drying up. Everybody knows about it. And what's the next big thing? So we said, well, all these people getting foreclosed on, they can't buy a house for another 7 years or so. And then the other half of the population is too scared to buy a house after watching what everyone went through. So that means they're all going to rent. And then we've reasoned that, okay, we just had a huge recession, which means we're probably going to have a significant expansion. So that that trend in going from owner to renter and then an expansion means, well, apartments should do really well. So we went and found a mentor who was a client of yours, Mike, and learned the business from him. And we went and found a 92-unit deal out in Macon, Georgia. I think the broker just saw a sucker from a mile away and gave us the deal. And we did not have the money to do it ourselves, so we came to you, and you helped us syndicate it, and that was about 1,800 units ago. So here we are.
That's amazing. Well, that's the story of everyone. I was doing houses in Minnesota, and the management of all these single-family houses was driving me crazy. So I said, what if I could find 10 houses and stack them on top of each other, and let's call it an apartment building? And so let's buy one of those. And I didn't have the money to invest. That's generally when you become a syndicator, when you don't have all the money you need to buy all the real estate you want for yourself. And there's a million people out there, who would love to share the opportunities that you find, but they're not going to buy something on their own. They don't have the money, the experience, the time. So I really tried to, when I was raising money, really tried to take the word sell out of my vocabulary, and you may have heard me talk over the years. I think you find an opportunity, and then you go to your database and you talk to people who who know you're looking for opportunities, and this is an opportunity that you're primed to do well, and you give them a chance to join you, and that's makes you feel good when when you provide good housing for people on one side of it, and
Mm-hmm.
then you provide good investments for other. That's good. So, Macon, Georgia, you're a Southern California boy right now. What are you doing buying property in Georgia, and is that your strategy?
Well, our strategy now is the Southeast in general, yes. So Florida, Georgia, Carolinas. The reason we bought the property in Macon back then, as it was our first deal, is like I said, I think the broker recognized the sucker when he saw one, gave us was someone who would actually buy a difficult distressed property, and it was also super cheap. We bought it for $7,500 a unit, right?
Mhm.
And it did, and it ended up worked out really well. We fixed it up, we quadrupled the income, we sold it for like 3 times what we bought it for, and I'm glad we did it. It was just extreme a lot of work. Now we have a very strict screening process. We look for areas of population growth, income growth, certain levels of median income, very little crime, no flood zones, and a few other things. So that actually for us would rule out most of Macon today. But back then it was just, hey, this is a deal that we think we can actually put together, and it pencils out really well on our analysis. So that's where the first deal came from. And then that deal and some others, we looked back and said, all right, how can we stack the odds even more in our favor? And we realized, all right, well, the area that property was in was, had low income, flat population growth. Well, if we do a similar property in an area that has higher income and population increases, then that's a stronger tailwind at our back. And so we adjusted our strategy over the years as to what markets that we buy in. So we still like the Southeast and Georgia as a whole, but there's definitely markets within there that we would prefer to stay away from.
You keep saying we, so there's another principal in your company. Is he back east?
No, so well, the first we, of course, is
Your wife.
is my wife, right? And so no one sees her. I'm the public face. And then beyond that, I do have a couple other principals that are kind of more really function as kind of like a board of advisors and a balance sheet when we need it for larger loans. And then we have brought on a few people. So we've got 2 acquisitions people, one that's in Northern California, another that is actually lives in Atlanta. And then we have just kind of a general manager who's our kind of admin ninja and can just do just about anything that's needed to be done. So we've grown to a kind of a good small core team.
Well, you've been to my workshops, and at the end of the workshops, I always talk about what do you need to do to get started. And number one is find someone to do this with. I'm always interested in making sure you have continuity, so that Andrew, if I'm going to give you my $50,000, what happens if something happens to you?
Right.
You've heard that before.
Yep.
So you've got to have that continuity. But there's more to it than that. And I will tell you, Andrew, that in asking this question, you're the 14th person that I finally got to interview, and 10 people have said that's the number one thing to do is not try to do this yourself. Get a team, and some of them are a little more expansive on the teams right away than others. And I've had a few people who say, we were sitting around the kitchen table, and my wife said to me, you're reading all those books on syndication, you're taking all these classes, why the hell don't you go out and do something? And and so you did something, and then you quit your job, and then you sat around the kitchen table again and made a decision, and she quit her job. I always say that's how I went to law school. I came home one day and sat around the kitchen table with my wife, and I said, something's going to have to change here. This syndication I'd had it up to here. And that's where all the great decisions in life are made, sitting around the kitchen table with the family. So I get a kick out of it. All of us are cut from the same cloth. It's amazing every time I talk to someone who's actually in the syndication business and hear about how they got started and what are they going to do, what their strategy is. And we're all cut from the same cloth. So do you think you're going to do the same strategy for the next 3 years?
More or less, yes. Definitely in terms of geographies. Although, we've always kind of focused, like take a large city like Atlanta, we've always focused more on the periphery, like the suburbs right around it. And right now that's turned out to be a very fortunate thing because the suburbs are doing exceptionally well, whereas some of the central business district areas aren't doing quite as well. And so we're going to continue to focus on suburbs. Other smaller tertiary cities that are growing and have population growth. In the short term, we're being a little bit more conservative about what we underwrite for rent growth. Whereas, pre-COVID, we get a property and say, okay, as soon as we get in there, we're going to start banging out renovations. We're going to get the rents up 100, 125, whatever that number is. And we're going to have that all done in 18 months. And then we're going to refinance or get a supplemental or something like that. Now, we say, okay, first year, no rent increases. And then, all right, we'll get the renovation done over the next 2 to maybe 3 years. Because if we get into, lots of forecasts have come out for varying amounts of rent decline over the next 12 months. I've seen 5%, I've seen 8%, a variety of numbers. So if that materializes, that significantly affects your ability to just renovate and release a unit and bump the rent. So we've changed our underwriting to a much less aggressive stance on renovating and releasing. It's worked great for the last 10 years. Right now, it looks like it might be a pretty risky bet to assume that that's going to continue to work. It may. Hopefully, things change quickly, but there's also a significant chance that they don't. And so that's definitely one thing. We're also, and this is a shift we made maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We're really targeting more C+ to B+. And if we get a C+, we're going to take it to a B, and kind of moving out of the C class properties where most people tend to start, and getting up to the B class for a handful of reasons. One of which being that when we look back over our history, the returns on the B class properties were often just as good, if not better, than on the C class properties, with less risk and less headache. Mm-hmm. And then also those are the properties that tend to just be the most stable when economic turmoil hits. So yeah, we've narrowed down we've kind of moved up the ladder in terms of class a little bit. And then we have at least temporarily changed our underwriting in terms of what we think we can do for renovations and rent increases.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a handle on how many investors you're representing right now?
Yeah, it's close to 600.
Isn't that spectacular? And we did your first deal together, right?
Yes, and I don't know if you remember how difficult it was to get that first one funded. I don't remember how many investors we ended up with. Maybe it was 15 or something like that. But it took 6 months. It was a grind because, I was a bit naive in thinking about how easy it would be to raise $1.2 million. Back in 2011, when everyone was scared of real estate, and we hadn't built out the network yet. So
and the track record and all that stuff. Yep. So it's difficult to do the second question the investor asks is, have you done this before? And so you need to get past that first one so you can say, hell yes, once,
Yep, exactly. No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Well, and then speaking to what you said earlier about don't do this alone, I basically did the first one alone.
Oh.
It was my wife and I, but we didn't have any other partners or anything. I did have the mentor. And so after the first one, I said, okay, that was brutal. And we went and found a great deal, a second deal that was a really good one. Then we went to our mentor and said, hey, what do you think about partnering on these? And he was like, well, you know what? I like working with you. We get along well. Sure. And it's like, I think the next 3 deals were, my original mentor became a business partner. And that
was that Mike?
That was Mike. Yep, okay. That was Mike. Yeah. And so that made it a much, much easier and more enjoyable business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do a lot of business with Mike and Derek. That's no doubt about that. Hey, you do 506Bs.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-existing relationship. What's the minimum investment size you're comfortable with for a single investor to come into your deal? Is it 25 or is it 50 or where are you today?
We've never done anything less than 50. And it kind of depends on the size of the deal. So if it's a small raise, we'll probably leave it at 50 just so more people can get in. If it's a larger raise, then what we might do is we might set the minimum at 100 and then say, okay, if this is your first time investing with us, you can do 50. Right,
Right.
because sometimes 100, if you don't have a good long track record with somebody, 100 grand can be, is a lot of money. Not that 50 isn't either, but so someone who's already invested in 5 or 6 deals, the minimum might be 100, and then for someone who's new, the first time, they can do 50, but that would be on a larger deal. If it's a smaller raise, just a couple million or something like that, then generally it's 50.
Mhm. Are you using any back office uh, companies to help you manage your investors or take them in or anything like that, like an IMS or a Redwood or anything?
We do use, yeah, a couple of years ago, we brought on IMS, the investor portal. And I
Yeah.
think and so that's where all the K1s, what we like about that is it's a secure place to store all the K1s, and then people can go in and see return histories
Mhm.
and all of that. We don't actually haven't used it for an actual raise yet. And then investor communications, that still goes through myself and our office ninja, Emily, who's just really good with all that. So we do use IMS, but we probably don't take full advantage of its capabilities.
When I made the decision to leave the syndication business and go to, as I said the other day, go to law school for the last 15 years of my working life, which was 27 years ago, uh, I had sent out 1,676 K1s that year.
Oof.
And that's a lot of licking stamps and licking envelopes. And there were no companies like Redwood or IMS or any of the or Crowd Street who do that back office stuff for you. If there had been a company like that, and I hadn't been faced with the issue of maybe increasing my staff more than I wanted to or renting more office space more than I really wanted to, I didn't see any end to just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I didn't want to do that. So I said, time out, I'm going to go do something else. So those are great services for you. So Andrew, I just have one more question for you, and once again, thanks for taking your time. Um, I'm interested in helping rookies. I've always been a mentor. I've always done a lot of education-based marketing, if you would. What advice would you have for a rookie, someone who's thinking about coming into the syndication business and doing their first deal?
Well, I'll give 2 things because the first one's already been brought up, and that is it's best to not go it alone. Find some partners, whether it's someone who is find a partner who brings value to the table that maybe is not your strength, right? So if you're really good at analyzing and finding deals, go find someone who has a big network and can be an actual active partner and help you raise money, or vice versa, right? Maybe you've got a huge network, you can raise a lot of money, partner with somebody who's got more deals than they have money. So definitely build your team. Don't go at it alone, and get a mentor as well, one way or another. And that doesn't have to be that you go pay someone 30 grand. A mentor is anybody who has more experience than you, right? And it could be I have mentors that I talk to once every 6 months, and then I have some that I talk to almost weekly, and none of that's paid. I mean, it was in the beginning, but now as you get into it, don't. So I guess what I'm saying is don't have too narrow of a view of what mentorship is, right? Anybody that's done more than you can be a mentor of some kind, and that you can learn from. And then the other thing I would say is just relentless persistence. I would credit that as to one of the reasons that we're still here today. Like I said, to get my first flip, I had to make 4,576 cold calls to get our first deal. I was not good at it. And then to get that first, I mentioned in that first apartment deal, it took 6 months to find the investors to raise that equity, and it was brutal. But if we hadn't persisted, if we had failed to close that deal and lost the deposit and all of that, I don't know if I'd be talking to you today. Right, that might have knocked us out of the game. So just have relentless persistence. Yes, the economy is changing. Yeah, yes, we have a pandemic and there's a lot of unknowns, but that does create uncertainty, but it will also create opportunity. So, if you've listened to a lot of us the last 5 years, one of the biggest refrains you hear is, "Oh my gosh, there's no deals. It's so hard to get deals," and that has been the case. I really think there's going to be a lot of opportunity coming the next couple of years, especially if you're new and you're targeting smaller properties, like under 100 units. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity there that has not been available for the last 5 or 6 years. So this could really be a great time to get educated and get into the business.
I've been around to quite a few downturns and upturns in the business since I started in this business in 1970. And every time there's the thought of a downturn, blood on the streets, people are talking about doing blind pools.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of calls these days. I call them homework calls from people who want to talk about doing a blind pool. How does it work and all that. Do you have any interest in that?
We've certainly considered it, and it gets back to your question about different strategies going forward. The reason being is right now, one reason being is right now bridge lending is extremely tight, very difficult to get a good bridge loan, and so any property that doesn't qualify for agency has a limited buyer pool, and there could be opportunity in being able to come in all cash.
Mm-hmm.
And then get a good clean T12 and then refinance out with agency. And you can do that if you have a pool where you've already got the money raised and sitting in an account. And then also, you can buy multiple assets and kind of spread out the risk. So there are some advantages to it, and we have considered it, but I haven't gotten to the point where I'm going to do my Gene Trowbridge homework call just yet.
Well, I don't think there's blood in the streets yet. This is what I'm telling people. Even if there was, is this the end of the blood in the streets, or is there more coming? So you never know when you're in there, but that's a tough road to hoe. But it is an acquisition strategy, because you're out there competing with the 1031 buyers, and you're out there competing with all cash buyers, and you're a syndicator, and you take 60, 90 days to put your deal together. It would be a whole different ball game if you had the cash. But I think we'll probably see that come along with some people, but I'm doing my best to talking people out of doing it today and waiting a little bit. One of the things that you accomplished when you did your first deal a long way away from home, you hired professional management, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
That makes you a player. You could have done a 30-unit deal and manage it yourself, but that's not quite right. You know Kenny Wolf?
I've heard the name, but I don't know him.
Kenny was telling me that I was interviewing him. He's out of Texas. His first deal was a 76-unit deal. And just like you and me, he didn't have enough money to buy a 76-unit property himself, but he wanted to buy a property big enough with professional management so he looked like a player. And I think that's a good idea. That's some good advice. You talk about making your first deal a success. On my 10 steps for a first-time syndicator, that's number 9. You've got to make your first deal a success, because in your first deal, maybe not with you because it was so big, a lot of the people who come and invest with you invest because of you. They know you. And if you can't close that deal and you have to give them their money back, the next time you go to them, they'll say, well, Kenny, sure, I'm going to invest with you, but last time it didn't quite start off well enough. Why don't you go out and get some money from some other people and then call me, and I'm happy to jump in. Oh, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. You've got to have some wherewithal to get that property closed on the closing date, even if you haven't raised the minimum in your minimum maximum offering. You've got to have a secondary plan. And in my world, actually going through the broker-dealer community all the way back then, I had to have that plan before I went in for due diligence. Every deal I went in, I had to tell them, I can close the deal. If you don't get your due diligence done in time and money raising takes a while, I can still close the deal. Your people will get their commission. You won't have to return any money. You're going to be a hero. I'm going to be a hero. Well, there's no risk in being a syndicator. Andrew, there's never any risk.
That's definitely one. That's definitely one mistake new people, or one misunderstanding new people have, or even sometimes investors don't realize actually just how much risk the sponsor, the syndicator, is actually taking on, in addition to any capital they're putting in the deal themselves.
That's another question that investors ask you. Hey, you're going to have any skin in the game? Well, in my day, skin in the game was only the capital you invested. Now, about a 180-degree change in that thought process is, yeah, I'm going to invest some capital, but I'm also signing the loan. My name's on the loan, and it may be non-recourse, but I'm still signing. There might be carve-outs. There might be, because I'm signing on this loan, I won't be able to do something else I want to do myself. Yes, I have skin in the game in two ways. Thank you very much.
Well, you've got the loan, and then also, you mentioned deals not going through. If a deal doesn't close, all the money goes back to the investors. Well, guess who's out the earnest money deposit, the due diligence cost, the third party? I mean, that's six figures on a good number of deals. That just comes out. That's just a straight 100% loss to the syndicator or the sponsor.
I do have some clients who want me to write their offers saying that the money will go back, but it may very well have been diluted by its use in hard money, earnest deposits.
Oh, interesting. I'd be curious to see how that's received by investors.
That's a tough sell.
I've never done that.
That's a tough sell, and you have to, especially in a blind pool, because the question is, okay, who you go out and find a property, who's going to pay for the due diligence? It isn't so much in a specific offering, because by the time you bring the offering to the streets, all that money's been spent. You're already invested, and it's all your money. Mm-hmm. So anything you raise, yes, you'll get reimbursed if the deal closes. But in a blind pool, there's all sorts of ways that you could use investors' money, and I think they need to know that. We need to disclose that. So we could talk forever and ever, but thanks for taking time out of your afternoon to be with me. I'm sure all my listeners will appreciate having listened to you, and I'm waiting for you when you call me and you pull the trigger on your next deal, and I'll be happy to do it for you.
Yeah, well, we've got a pretty sizable offer out right now. We're negotiating, so we'll see. Hopefully I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, Andrew. Look up Andrew at his website and read all about him and all about his company. And I'm going to turn off the recording now.